G'day, Geoff Lewis here from Seriously Series, and welcome to another episode of Servicing Your 4x4. In this episode we're going to be doing a simple oil change here on the Land Rover Perentie, and I'm going to be showing you some of the tips and tricks that you need to keep in mind if you're looking at purchasing one of these vehicles or if you already own one. Should be an interesting video as always, so you know what to do. Stay tuned. Rightio, so the Land Rover Perentie, for those of you who don't know, is basically the Australian derivative or variant of the Land Rover 110 or Land Rover County. And that's a very crude way of explaining it, but we're going to keep things pretty brief in this video. You can find out more by visiting our unique 4x4 playlist on our channel, where I actually go through the Land Rover Perentie in a great amount of detail. The motor that's actually in the Land Rover Perentie is very different. It is a 4BD1, or more commonly known as a 3.9 litre 4-cylinder naturally aspirated diesel engine. And this is made by a company, which I'll probably pronounce it incorrectly, known as Isuzu. And it's a very, very well built engine. It's been used in a number of different forms of machinery in the past, forklift trucks, it's been used as a stationary engine for a generator, it's been used in trucks, cars, you name it, it's been used in or used for. So very, very successful, very simple and very easy to work on. Now the Perentie here that I've got has done 150,000 Ks since new, and that's verified with the logbook. And the oil that I use is a 1540 diesel oil, and that works very well for me. 2050 is a little bit too thick, a little bit too viscous, and the engine doesn't perform to its optimum with it. I find using 1540 works really well because it means the engine's working really nice and I'm not burning any oil too, so it's the right viscosity for the engine. Now when it comes to actually looking at doing a service on one of these engines, what you need to look at is getting the right oil filter. Now there's a number of different oil filters you can get for this motor. Now if you've got the 6x6 variant, so the 6-wheel drive variant of the Land Rover Perentie, you will need 2 oil filters to actually go on the motor itself. If you've got the FFR or the GS, which this one here is a FFR, you'll need to use 1 oil filter. And if you're going down the road of Ryco, which I am here, it's a Z141, and that's your oil filter there. Now if you have a civilian variant known as the Land Rover 110 or Land Rover County, then you will actually use a cartridge filter, and that was also used in the Land Rover Series 3 Stage 1, I believe from 1982 or 1983 to 1985 when they were discontinued. And I've got that in, obviously, the Stage 1 in our collection here in WA. So that's something you really need to keep in mind, because if you go down to your local automotive store, you're going to get baffled pretty quickly. So you need that. I'd recommend with your engine oil, it does take a lot of oil, I think around about 8 litres. Make sure you buy it in a 20 litre drum, otherwise it's going to cost you an absolute fortune. I buy everything in 20 litre drums and it works out much cheaper, and it means if I've got 1 drum, that's pretty much going to last me 12 months, because I can get basically 2 services out of that, and with a little bit to spare. Anyway, we'll get under the vehicle and I'll show you where the actual plug is, or the drain plug, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of the things you need to look out for. Rightio, so in the bowels of the beast, underneath the Perentie. Now, one little top tip before I show you where the drain plug is in the sump: check your oil pan. You're going to drain it into an oil pan or a container, check it thoroughly, because for the first time in 15 years I've drained this and Oil's gone all over the shed. The oil pan had a leak in it. Troubles in paradise, hey? So anyway, I'm going to have to get the Perentie up and going, the Series 2, and move all the stuff out of the shed and clean it up. Fun, hey? Anyway, enough of me whinging and moaning. Let's get back to business. Okay, so obviously we've got the bell housing here. We've got the front prop shaft here. And the drain plug, or the sump plug, is just up in here. Now, one of the things I would recommend if you are looking at doing a service yourself, get yourself a half decent funnel. As you can see here, it's got a nice lip on one side. It's got a nice big hole too, so what you can actually do is just hold it up there like so, and it stops all the oil going all over your prop shaft. And then even if you wipe that off with degreaser or whatever you want to use, the first moment that you hit a dirt road or a track, everything's going to stick to it. And how do I know this? Well, it's from experience. So the sump plug is a 17mm. I like to use a ratchet spanner. Works really well, gets up in there. I tend to find if you use a socket with a ratchet, you can get it on the wrong angle and you can actually damage the sump plug itself. So that's pretty much it. So once you take that out, you want to put a new copper washer in there so it seals nicely. And then once you've done that, a little bit of thread tape doesn't hurt either if you're a bit paranoid. That's about that. Well, rightio. So I'm on the driver's side, which is on the right side of the vehicle. And why is it on the right side? Well, it's as the name suggests. That's the right side that the steering wheel should be on. Anyway, jokes aside, what we've got here is the inlet manifold. And obviously we've then got 1, 2, 3, 4 injectors. Now, the fantastic thing about this motor is its simplicity and obviously its longevity. The best claim that I've heard is from a gentleman I met at the Perth 4-wheel drive show, and he said he has got an Isuzu in his Land Rover and he has managed to get 700,000 kilometres without a rebuild. You won't get that out of a new Land Cruiser. Well, we'll wait and see, I should say. Getting ahead of myself there. But anyway, the injector pump itself obviously has 4 pistons within it. So this means that you've got 1 piston for each injector, which means it's going to last a really long time. Anyway, getting sidetracked, I just get really excited about this engine. But obviously the inlet manifold's important because underneath it is where our oil filter is. And anyway, I'll bring you in a little bit closer and I'll show you where it is and I'll show you a couple little tricks on how to get it off. Rightio, so the oil filter, as you can see, is that white cylindrical thing underneath the air intake, which is here. And obviously to get it off, it can be quite problematic. So one of the things I suggest that you do is when you do take it off, put it back on and make sure it's on nice and tight, about hand tight, because this makes it much easier in the future to take it off. Now, how do you get it off if you've just bought the vehicle? Well, I'll show you that trick now. Well, you've probably heard the term that the rich man buys his tools once. Well, so does the smart man too. And this is a really, really handy tool that I've got here. Now, this is actually called an oil wrench. And basically how it works is you put your 1/2 inch socket drive into here, or you can put an extension in, and then you've got a strap. And I'll demonstrate with this oil filter here, but I'll just have a bit of this first. Oh, it's good. Bit of a warm one here in Australia today. It's starting to get into summer. So we've got one oil filter here that I prepared earlier. And obviously we've got the strap here, as you can see. The strap then goes over it, and depending on which way I want to actually rotate it, I just simply twizzle it round. So I've got it like so. Then all I need to do is by obviously having a ratchet and an extension, or just the ratchet itself. I can then obviously turn it, and as I do that, I turn the oil filter. How easy is that? No plastic, no fancy trimmings, nothing like that. And the good thing is, because it's such a large, obviously, hole, as you can see, you can fit it on an array of different vehicles. So if you've got a few vehicles, I hate to say, that aren't Land Rovers in your fleet, or aren't FJ Land Cruisers, then don't fear, it's okay. You can still justify buying it. Anyway, I'll show you how easy that is to get the actual oil filter off. Rightio, now if you're a far tougher individual than I am, and you've got a beard made out of steel wool, you can probably just look at that and it'll come undone. But using the oil wrench that I showed you makes it pretty easy. You can just crack it off. And that's all I've done. I've just made it a little bit easier to take off. Now I can screw that off relatively easily by hand. And pull it out. And there we have it. Voila. Piece of cake. And look, if you're a little bit hard pressed for cash, and look, there's no shame in that, I've been there myself too, or you're halfway through and you just can't be bothered hopping in the car and driving down to buy another tool for the tool collection, what you can do is you can just get a flat bladed screwdriver. Be very careful when you do this, and you can actually get a hammer, take out some frustration and push that flat bladed screwdriver all the way through, just to demonstrate, like that. And then once you've got it, you can then use it to crack the oil filter off. Bear in mind though, when you do that, oil is going to go everywhere, all over your nice new Perentie and all over your concrete too. But if you're in a similar situation to myself, you really don't care, because the shed's already covered with oil all over the concrete anyway. Anyway, I'll show you one more top tip in regards to your oil filter and fitting it, because there are a few little tricks of the trade there too. Rightio, so a slight correction to this video. Now, I mentioned the Ryco Z4141. It doesn't fit. I thought I'd chop and change a bit. I've always used Donaldson filters, and I found out that the Z141, the diameter of the actual where it screws onto is different, and it is actually a smaller filter. So what you want to go for is a Donaldson filter, a P550422, and don't worry, I'll put that in the content section down below so you can look that up. Rightio, so we've got the new filter here, and we just want to obviously unwrap it. Like so. Now we've got an O-ring obviously around here. And the best thing to do is just to put a little bit of oil around that. Now some people will suggest that you fill the oil filter with oil. That works really well, but when it's upside down and you're trying to screw it on, what's going to happen to all the oil? It's going to come out, isn't it? So in the case of this, we can't really do much about that. Okay, so I've smeared that just around the O-ring itself, and that just helps it to seal and bind a little bit better. And now we're going to actually screw it in place. So make sure you've got no oil on your hands, and you've got to reach down and as some people say, get it right in there. Right, so I've got the oil filter tightened up, and I've basically just got my two hands in there with a rag, just tighten it up as hard as I possibly can, and that's usually sufficient. That way I know if I've got to do a service out in the bush or something like that, or out in a remote area, I can undo it myself without using any of the fancy tools. Okay, so basically all I've got to do now is fill it up with oil, and off I go. So that's pretty uneventful, so I'll leave you here. But anyway, thanks for watching, and look, I hope this video has been of use to you if you are looking at buying a Perentie, or if this is one of your first Land Rovers or 4x4s. And if you are enjoying the content here at Seriously Series, I do encourage you to check out us on Patreon. And if that isn't your cup of tea, you can support us via PayPal too. And all proceeds go to actually producing these videos here. If you're new to the channel and you're just finding out who we are, what we do and all the rest, then click on that subscribe button down below, click on the notification button too, and that way you won't miss out on one single video. Anyway, I hope to see you in our next video.